Hi, everybody. Welcome to this new conversation explored by TalkX. Our special guest today is Lolita Taub. Lolita, thank you so much for being here.
I'm so happy and excited to be here to talk with Latin American, European, just global founders all over. So thank you for joining us today, and thank you for having me, Justine.
Exactly. And just maybe before we start the conversation, some details about this chat. We're going to have this conversation for about 45 minutes. We're going to be together. Guys, if you have any questions, please use the chat in the Twitch channel to ask whatever you want, because we're going to have 10 minutes at the end of the conversation to answer all your questions. So don't hesitate. My name is Justine. I'm going to be the host of this talk today. I have about 8 years of experience in entrepreneurship and innovation. And I am now actually a new entrepreneur also, launching a startup in the wellness tourism ecosystem. So I'm going to be very also interested in getting your answer, Lolita, about entrepreneurship. So Lolita, I know that you are a GP at your fund, Ghana's Ventures. Maybe the best way to start our conversation is for you to introduce yourself the way you want. Maybe when did you start your career, your actual current activities, where you come from, the way you want.
All of the things. Well, my second home
Exactly.
is Twitter, but I am in San Diego, so San Diego, California. So any of you that ever want to visit, it's a beautiful place. I'm first generation Mexican American. My parents immigrated from a small dairy town and really farm in Jalisco, and that's a state in Mexico. And fast forward, I am GP at Ghana's Ventures, which is, for those of you who may be wondering, what is a GP at a fund? And this just means that I own my own fund and I have the ability to write checks to founders. And we're particularly investing in pre-seed and seed, community-driven, and I'm sure we'll get into what that means, startups in the US and in Latin America. I have over 15 years in the tech industry in Silicon Valley, working at big corporate companies, startups, and then the last 6+ years in venture capital. So I've made over 90 plus investments as an angel, working at other funds. I previously had another fund called the Community Fund, and now this is my latest and greatest, Ghana's Ventures, and we're actively writing checks. I'll bait the market. You should always ask, if you're talking to an investor, are you actively investing? Because some of us are not. And I'm really, really proud of being here. And I couldn't be here without the broad community of over 70,000 founders, funders, and ecosystem friends that make up my community. And that is definitely something that we leverage for our portfolio companies at Ghana's Ventures. So that's a little bit about me.
Okay, that's a lot of activities. Thank you, Lolita. And I know that your Ghana's Ventures and also different activities that you have are really into encouraging women into entrepreneurship, investment. So maybe my first question for you would be, how would you explain the current global situation where actually women are underrepresented in the tech, in the entrepreneurship and investing ecosystem? Why this situation?
Yeah, this is such a hairy, like we could talk about this for many, many days and hours and so on and so forth. But when we look at the venture capital and startup space, in my opinion, there's one stat or a couple stats that paint the picture a little bit as to why it is that there's a lack of founders and investors that are women. And that's over 90% of investors are white males that invest in over 90% white male founders. And now that's not necessarily a problem in terms of having white male investors or founders getting funded. But what it clearly states is this problem of needing more women and diverse investors writing checks. And that's actually one of the core reasons why I was inspired to become a check writer 8 years ago, going down the tracks and saying, why is it that women are having such a hard time fundraising when they're really great founders? Why is it that all types of different underrepresented, underestimated founders are having such a hard time fundraising? And to me, the answer is representation in who's writing checks and who's also assessing the opportunities, because based on your personal lived experiences, your background, it paints and allows you to see opportunity in what companies and what founders we should be backing. And so for me, at the core of it is representation. And how do we address that? For me, it's a lot about hiring diversity. It's about it not just in tech companies, in funds or in startups, but also allowing for within funds, when we do hire diverse talent, to give them ability to write checks, not just to be participating and executing. So really giving power back to the people and making it part of a conversation. How do we become more inclusive within the ecosystem? So a lot of putting money where our mouth is, but also having a dynamic conversation about it and being really upfront about it. It's uncomfortable, but in order for us to change, we need to have uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah. And yeah, actually, I heard that it's a human normal situation and reaction that we want to invest, or we better understand the person in front of us if
Mm-hmm.
he or she is similar to us. No, so actually that's what you were saying. No, if we have also more female investor, it's better for female founders, no, to get money.
Yes, well, that is our hypothesis, and I think the data will show ultimately what happens. But that is what I believe, that if we have more people that represent our population, our community, we will have founders of a more representative background as well.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And why is it so important for you in your journey to encourage them to get involved and be more represented? Is it because of your own personal life situation, or for another reason?
Yeah, Justine, I think that's right on the money, right? Like, because you are a woman founder, you also understand what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
right? You get it. You're like, you don't have to explain
Okay.
certain things to me. And I think being in the industry where it's mostly males, it's mostly a particular profile of human, and wanting to be part of it, building in and seeing how hard it is. I think when you're building, you want to open up the doors for others. And so for me, it's my personal mission to actually create generational wealth in community. And I want to see more women in power and other underrepresented, underestimated founders getting backed. But really, at the end of the day, venture capital is about investing in the best founders. And I believe that if we have check writers that have the ability to write checks, and they look like our population, that will have that different outcome. But other things, more specifically for women, from a business perspective, there's a huge opportunity. So women hold over 80% of purchasing power and influence. And that means that companies that we build, there's a huge opportunity to make so much money.
Yeah.
And a huge market. And the other thing is, at least from the US perspective, women own about 50% of personal wealth. And there's this thing called the Great Wealth Transfer that, if you have not heard of it, I think you should look it up. But over $30 trillion globally will be transferred to women in the next decade. And so I think this is a really huge opportunity outside of my personal, I want to see more representation. There's also huge business opportunity that's there to be taken advantage of, and to grow all of us together to grow that community generated wealth. And that's one of the things that we're doing at Ghana's Ventures. I mean, that's why we're backing the best founders in community-driven companies. And we are taking advantage of the fact that we have access to these wonderful founders that traditional Silicon Valley investors haven't been able to access.
Yeah, that's cool. That's pretty inspiring for us. Thank you. And another subject that we talked about in our preparation for this talk is mental health. I know that
Mm-hmm.
it's a subject very important for both of us. And as an entrepreneur, it can be very hard sometimes to find a healthy balance between personal and professional life. The line is very, very thin. So, how's your experience dealing with that, with this challenge in your life? And also, is it possible for a young entrepreneur to be successful without working 12 or 13 hours a day every day?
Well, I think different people have different perspectives on this, but here's what I'll say. Hustle culture is real, and it's very real in the startup world. It's a huge problem, right? So it's the hustle culture, for those of you who are just hearing it now, it's this constant idea that we need to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in order to be productive, in order to get ahead, in order to build the best companies. And while I do believe that you have to work hard, that there is no shortcut, that working to that extreme is counterproductive, because at the point where you're exhausted, burnt out, there's no, your productivity levels actually drop. And personally, I have experienced this where I have been swayed by hustle culture. It's hard not to, right? Because someone's like, I didn't sleep X amount of hours. I'm working so hard on this. I'm doing all these things. It could be really easy to get caught up. But I think that for me, it's become even more important to promote thinking about what are our boundaries and our limits. Each of us is different. Some of us need more sleep, some of us need less, some of us work better in the evening, some of us work better in the morning. So better understanding yourself as an individual, understanding what are your boundaries and your limits to maintain a healthy you. And knowing that this is a marathon. This is not something where a sprint, right? You're going to be done next week or next year. When you start building a startup, it's many years. So what's going to be, and this is a very personal answer, what's going to be that balance? And I put it in air quotes because we're always, I think, as humans, struggling to be healthy, but be productive, but do all of the things. And the reality is that we can do all of the things, but not all at the same time, and not while, putting our health on the line. And just being really mindful of it is, I think, one first step. And for me, one thing that I've done, and something that may help you guys too, is time blocking on calendars. So what time are you going to do for work, for life, for rest? I literally block out days sometimes to just do focused work, because it is very hard to switch in and out from having meetings with, for me, for example, with founders and then investors and then the community, and doing all these different activities. So you know yourself best. And this may be a good way of addressing some of that balancing, knowing, asking yourself, what should be my boundaries and my limits so I can be the best version of me? And then blocking out time to say, okay, this is my times when I'm going to take calls. This is when I'm going to do my focus work. This is when I'm going to rest, and really make rest a priority. You will find on my calendar, like, do nothing blocks, because it's so hard for me to do nothing, but it is so important for all of us to do nothing sometimes.
Yeah. And use block also for your, actually not only professional life, but also personal life. No, and it, for example, meditating is good for you, or doing yoga, I don't know, at the beginning or the end of the day, it's important. You should have your block in your Gmail calendar, no?
What do you block out? It sounds like you also use this technique. What's your block? Is it yoga for you?
For me, it's dancing. Actually,
dancing.
Yeah, I do ballet. So this is my time during the week where I can't think about another thing, that my body and I have to be very, very focused. So this is my
I love that. And I think that's the best thing. Like, think about something that you enjoy that gets your mind off of work all the time, because it's oftentimes when you get the creative juices flowing right after, because you're not like,
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of you can remember the time when you were writing essays. Maybe you're still writing them for school and you would want to finish this essay so badly, but you've been staring at it for so long and you can't move on. That's what
Yeah.
it's like with building anything. And so we need time to separate, to rest, so then we can come back and do an even more excellent piece of work. So
Yeah.
I'm really happy to hear that you're
Yeah, and be open to
ballet.
creativity and new ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Um, Another question that I had, and it's based on what you said in your introduction about community. No, I think I saw a TechCrunch interview of you talking about raising money actually for your investment fund, Ghana's Venture,
Mhm.
and you said about that instead of go to market, the future is go to community. Could you elaborate on that and explain why community has been so many times, I understood, at the heart of your projects?
Yes, no, I love this question. Well, first of all, I know some of us are first-time founders, so I'd like to first define go-to-market. Go-to-market, the way that I think about it in a very simple format is, what are you selling, to whom, through what method? So what is kind of the business model, and where, and how? It's kind of like a synopsis of how your business runs, right? Like who, what, where, and how. The how part for me has always been community. Growing up in the hood in LA, survival, like food security, physical security was brought by community. And so I learned very much that to just be alive, community was so important. When I started working in big tech companies and I was a consultant and then in sales, the only way that I was able to close these multi-million-dollar deals was always in a team, in a community. And so I learned the power of going to market with community. So always thinking, how is it that we can enable a group of people to be able to go make a sale? So when we think about go to market and we think about go to community, it's literally thinking about, instead of thinking of people, and companies have historically thought of people and customers as lines on a ledger, on an accounting ledger, to challenge that and say, we need to think of our customers like people, people who want to belong, people who have problems that they want to solve, and not just by themselves, with others, and that they want to also actually co-create those solutions that unicorns will bring to us today and in the future. And so based on this hypothesis, very much an evolution of sales and very much an evolution of how we think about business, instead of thinking about it like, again, ledger, thinking of people as people and saying, hey, if you have people who are identifying with a community, then you have literally a team of folks that
Yeah.
in a community that's going to help you build your product, give you feedback, bring the talent you need, help you with your business metrics, give you a differentiator that's difficult to replicate, and also mark that flywheel and kick off that flywheel of marketing and sales. And to that end, the way that we defined community-driven companies at Ghana's is, one, you have to have your customers identify as members of a community. Two, there has to be a space for your community members to get together and add value to one another. And three, the members need to have the ability to kick off this marketing sales flywheel. And it could be word of mouth. But to give you some examples of community-driven companies, ByteDance is one of the biggest. It's a decacorn, right? It's a $140 billion company, and it's all TikTok, right? So ByteDance, TikTok, it's community-driven.
Yeah.
People have a space to create value for each other. I think this is where everyone's going to be like, oh yeah, that's true. Like, we're creating content, it's serving others, and we create value for each other. And then you're like, oh my God, you have to see this on TikTok. That is the power of community. There's other companies like Canva and Miro and Discord and OpenSea. These are all unicorns and decacorns. And so this is the hypothesis that we work off of, and what we believe is the future of companies, and why we're investing in community-driven companies in Ghana.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is something that we saw a lot recently with the social media. No, this is the point: creating a community and building with them, and A/B testing even with them, no, and co-creating with them. Um, Actually, that leads me to another question that I have about
Mm-hmm.
personal branding. Because when
Sure.
we think about social community and create a community, often we hear about personal branding. Are you okay with that? Or is it also possible to build a very successful companies without it?
Yes, I believe there is. So there's different types of communities. And just to address one point, because I know we are going to talk a little bit about going out and talking to your customers. But the easiest way, I'm going to talk about what you said. You said, hey, you can bring some folks together to help build your company. That's oftentimes the initial way that a lot of community-driven companies will start, where they will come at it from that perspective and they'll say, hey, we're building to solve your problem, whatever X problem it is. Do you want to come and have your problem solved, connect with others who are having the same
Hmm.
problem so you cannot be lonely, and also help us create this product?
Yeah.
And oftentimes when you're that transparent, people will say yes. Your potential customers will say yes. And that's a really great way of building your product, because you're literally listening to your target customer and building based on what they want, instead of thinking, I think this is what they want, so let me build it and then go ask them. It's starting with your customer first and your community first. So that's one thing. You asked about branding. Can you build a community-driven company without a brand? Depends on how you're defining brand. So brand historically has been thought of as marketing, right? And in from a corporation perspective, I think Coca-Cola has done a really great job. Nike has done a really great job. Everyone knows the swoosh sign with Nike. And Nike's actually a very big brand, but they are also really community driven. When you look at their products, they're not selling to you their sneakers. They're selling to you the concept of just do it. They're selling to you the concept of look at how awesome the people are that wear our stuff. We're all about being athletes and getting things done. And so from a brand perspective, I'll take it two ways. One is the company and corporate way of creating a brand. Creating a brand can be a great mechanism through which you share the vision, the values, and the mission of your company. And that is like honey to bees, like or maybe bears. But it's like that. This is one of the foundations for community-driven companies, is having your audience, who will then become community members, understand what are you about, what are your values, like why are we getting together, like what kind, like, so that it's so clear that you self-identify as I am part of this community or I'm not. Like when you look at Nike, you're either going to say yes, I'm an athlete, or no, I'm not. Right? Or yes, I'm part of it, or no, I'm not. And so a brand can be very helpful in identifying and making that clear, so that people understand, do I belong to that or not? Same thing with Apple has built a really great brand, right? So when you think about their products, you're actually thinking about like what kind of person buys Apple products versus Microsoft products. And because I come from tech and I see this, like technology is religion as well. And so it's this concept of there's that kind of brand building. And I do believe that it is important, but at the core, it's, can you get out your vision, mission, values, so that your community members can identify you as, yes, this is a safe space for us.
Yeah.
Second thing is personal branding. I have built a personal brand, and I am here partially because of that, and a lot of the community, right? This is a second way of a type of branding that has become more popular with time.
Yeah.
It has its drawbacks. If you come from nothing, I believe that you should build a personal brand. Absolutely. If you have a
Okay.
trust fund and you don't need money, I think like it's okay. But at the core of it, you need to ask yourself, what, instead of saying, do I need a personal brand? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? Think about your business. What do you need to be successful? And really have a strong conversation with yourself about who you are. Because if you want to build something and you're like, I think I should be out on Twitter all the time, but it's not you, that inauthenticity will show and it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So there's
People will
so
pay.
many layers,
Yeah.
so many layers to talk about here. But the truth, I think, Justine, what you're pointing at is it's really important to whatever your company you're building to be really clear about who it's for. And if it is community driven, what are your values and who should feel that they should come in and feel comfortable coming in, and at the same time be exclusive, be specific enough that people can know, okay, this is not for me.
Got it. Okay. And maybe because we are thinking about how to start and how to start creating your brand, your maybe personal brand, I think that this is the perfect moment to maybe get into a special moment. And actually the explorers of the program of Santander are right now in this period of getting in contact with their potential clients to get feedback. No, this is crucial for the development of their projects, but this is also key to get the famous traction we talked about before, that early stage investors like you want to see. So where and how to look for those key people and first early adopters, and what is sufficient traction for you as an investor?
These are really wonderful questions. So I'm going to tie it back to community because community is amazing. And that's how I see the world. But when you think about, first off, I think it's a really exciting time to go out and talk to your customers and give them your hypothesis and say, am I right or am I wrong? Essentially, when you're first going out and you just have an idea, to come from a humble perspective and be very vulnerable is really important. It is really hard and it is very scary. So for all of you guys who are out there and feeling like, I don't know how comfortable I feel, it's totally normal. Right, Justine?
Yeah, I get it. Same situation.
It's very normal to feel this way. So if you're feeling that way, it's okay. But if you just reframe it and think about the fact that you are passionate about solving that particular problem that you are solving, and that if you are able to hear feedback, that you will be able to get to that solution and bring it to market and bring it to the world, that's such a wonderful feeling of I'm creating value with the help of those that need it. And so the first thing would be, you said, hey, how do I even like find who to talk to? I think about it from a perspective of community. Now, there's already a community that you are serving. No matter what the problem is, there's the community of people who have an issue with, hearing. If you can think of anything, but let's just say the hearing community. So maybe people are deaf. So where would you find the deaf community? Well, you Google and you see the associations, the different organizations. These are nodes of where you would find a lot of the people that you would be serving. So think about it that way. Like who are you targeting and where do they currently live?
Yeah.
And where are they currently getting together? This is pretty simple. Maybe you need a Google, hopefully not, because if it's a problem that you're really passionate about, you probably know others that are having the same issue or you have some connection. But think about it, if you want to do like the bonus level, it's think about organizations or communities or places where they already live. Maybe it's Instagram, maybe it's Twitter, maybe it's LinkedIn, maybe it's not any of those. Maybe it's an organization or a club or an association, something like that.
Or
so
maybe
think about
just
that.
the cafe right across the streets, no?
And maybe that too. But really be thinking about where do they already get together? Maybe it's a Reddit. It could be so many different places, but you ask yourself, like, where do they live? Like, Justine, where do you go to talk to your customers? You're talking about bringing wellness to the world. Where do you find like your potential customers?
Definitely at the yoga studios, for example, because I know that those are people interested
Exactly.
in mindfulness and well-being festivals. Also, I go to.
So I love this. So exactly what you're saying, right? So if Justine is serving a population who appreciates wellness and wants wellness in their life, she's thinking, where are they seeking wellness now? And then she's going and she's connecting. So that's an excellent example. So think about the community that already exists and where are they to know where to go. And then once you're there, be transparent. Hey, we're building this. What do you think about it? Make sure that you think about the questions that you want to ask. And I would even think about potentially putting a survey together, whether you send it out or you're asking one by one on a call or via email or whatever it is. But think about questions that you can ask so that you can collect data points so that you can have an observation and insight of what is the market telling me? Do they want it? Do they want it differently? Do they want something different? What's the price point potentially that they would be interested in? So think about these questions that you want to ask and then ask them systematically so you can draw some insight. So that would be my thought there. In terms of traction, because you gave me like 10 questions in one, Justine, but I'm going to answer them all.
I know.
No, so from an investor perspective, traction is really important because for us, it shows whether the market wants what you're building. Yeah. And oftentimes what we see on our side is founders that are looking for the problem instead of the solution. And what do I mean by this? Like sometimes founders will say, I built this solution.
Do you want it?
Do you want it? And instead of thinking first, like, what is the problem? And then figuring out, is this the solution and how do you go about doing it? It's really important to think of this whole process as like the scientific process and think, I have this hypothesis, here's why, and then say, how can I test it? Because startups are really a series of experiments. So have your hypothesis, think about how you're going to test it and have metrics. So one could be literally like, can I get a wait list of X amount of people? And if you can't get there, then you sit down and reassess and you think, maybe I was wrong in my hypothesis. I need to change something, throw it out altogether, start over, or something different. And so for us, again, traction is about, can you show us that the market wants what you are building? And for every business, traction can look very different. We look at Ganas at different business models. It could be B2B, B2C, P2P, all types of different models. And so depending on the models, the traction and the metrics that we're looking for may be different. And I hope that they could share it in the chat with you guys, but there's a chart that I have on Twitter, and I'll retweet it if you guys go to over here at Lolita Taub. I'll retweet it in a bit. So you can have it, but there's different types of metrics that we may be looking at depending on your model. But ultimately, as founders get started, a wait list could be easy to start with to show some traction. Like this shows people are interested. But the best type of traction is always customers paying money. And it doesn't matter, like it's just different because when you are asking people, sometimes, especially if they're your friends, they may say, yes, I want it. Yes, I will buy it. Yeah. But then when it comes time for it to happen, they're like, well,
maybe next time.
Has that happened to you, Justine?
Yes. It happens obviously because they want to support you, and they want to be positive and encourage you. But at the moment of paying and assisting to a session or whatever it is, it's different. If it's not your client, he or she is not going to be interested, even if it's your friend or family member. We only have 1 minute before the Q&A session.
Sure.
So maybe I think that a lot of people always are very interesting in the pitch now and what investors want to see in a pitch. So maybe beside of distraction, what would be maybe, I don't know, the 2-3 key elements you look for in a foreign pitch?
Yeah, no, this is an excellent question. I would say that I'll really just focus on two, just to keep it short as well. One is the market. How big is it? And for venture capitalists, we're looking at companies, we want to invest in companies that can have valuations of $1 billion+ within a decade, right? And so your market must be $1 billion or bigger, multiple billions or better. And the reason why is because if you have a really big market, it means that if you pivot, which every company pivots, you will have the space to create a unicorn. So first, for me, I really want to know the market size and the market growth. So it's not good enough for there to be $1 billion market if it's shrinking. It's getting smaller, then it may not be as good of a market to invest in. The second thing I'll talk about is the founding team. And really for us, early stage investors is a huge importance because you're just getting started and we're really investing in founders, in the founding team. And so what I personally really love to see in founding teams is having what I call the three-legged stool. One is having in the founding team, someone who has industry expertise, tech expertise and sales expertise within the realm that you are working in, within the market. And again, this is because you want to have a good foundation to be able to build your business. And when you're getting started, you may not have all these elements, but maybe you have contractors, or maybe you have volunteers, or maybe you have advisors or investors that help you fill these gaps until you're able to raise money and be able to bring people on board. So those would be a couple of the things that are very, very important. And again, as a third would be your community driven. But I will say, caveat there, we look for those kinds of companies, community driven companies, but you don't have to be a community driven company to be successful in the world. There are other types of companies that also succeed.
Thank you, Lolita. We could stay and talk forever, but we don't have the time. So maybe we should start the Q&A session. And we have so many questions. Sorry, guys, in advance if we don't have enough time for everything. First one, Lolita, what was the best advice you were given in life?
Oh gosh, I think the first thing that comes to mind is what my dad used to always tell me, échale ganas. And that's actually why we named Ganas Ventures, Ganas Ventures. For those of you who don't know what ganas means, in Spanish, it has a couple meanings, right? It means winning. So you have to stay focused and centered because we're going to win. And in order to do that, you have to be focused. But more importantly, the way that I grew up with it was more of you don't give up, you persist. Things are difficult at times, but you overcome obstacles. Y le echas ganas, siempre muchas ganas. So we look for that in our founders, and I always look for that in myself, and it's carried me through here. And that is definitely the best advice, because sometimes there's some really tough days and you just have to remind yourself that you have to keep going, y con ganas.
Con ganas. Actually, about the hard times, the second question on the matter of sustainability and health, either for your business or personal, what are the best practices on the long run?
To be sustainable, it's really, so this question's on both the personal and the business perspective, is that right?
Business and personal, sustainability and health.
I love this question because I did not come from money, and as I've been building, I have to think of ways of how to pay the bills. Yeah. When you're building a company, when you're building a fund, you're fundraising, and if you don't have the funds, then where do you pay yourself? And you're always wondering that. And there are some investors who think differently than me, but I think first of all, you need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and you think about the bills that you have. So if you have to, as you're getting started, keep your day job. That's what I did for a very long time. I quit my full-time job in January and we launched Ganas in March. And so thinking about first, what are your personal financial responsibilities? And what can you do without putting yourself in a situation where you're just going to be constantly stressed? Because if you are in that space, it's very difficult to build something that's difficult to build in general. Yeah. So that would be the first thing. And then when you're building a business, I think it's really important to be reminding yourself that you are building a business, which means you need to charge money. And you need to figure out a way. I know it sounds very simple and obvious, but sometimes when I look at pitch decks and I'm talking to founders, they're not thinking about that. And in this macroeconomic situation we're in, where we are in a downturn, investors and everyone is thinking a little bit more practically. Like, we need to make sure that you have enough runway, which is runway is money to keep the lights on in your business for an extended period of time. So being really cost effective, cost efficient, thinking about what you can do versus what you should outsource, what should be prioritized and not, is really important right now in thinking about what's going to allow you to grow. I could talk more about it, but hopefully that's helpful for you guys.
Yeah, very helpful. Another question is, based in your experience, which do you consider are the key points every entrepreneur must have to follow for a business success? Hard question.
I think I would go back to know your market, right?
Yeah.
Have the right team. Definitely persist, because it gets challenging, but be really humble and vulnerable. There are times on the investor side where I meet founders and they have great businesses and they're growing and they're fundraising, but it's hard to coach them. They'll say, no, I know everything. It's hard. And for, if you're not vulnerable and honest about where your weaknesses are, we all have weaknesses. It's really excellent to always talk about our strengths. We're so great at this, and the other thing, but we also have weaknesses, and we need to be able to be vulnerable and honest about them so we can ask for help. And I think that's the biggest key, is you don't have to know it all. You jump in and you learn as you go, but always be open and vulnerable and humble enough to say, I have a question, or I need help, or I don't understand how this works. And don't think that there's like a dumb question. There isn't. Everyone has questions on different things. And if you need to have something explained to you, have it explained, instead of thinking like, oh, I don't want to ask this question because I may seem dumb. Don't do that, because you're building a business. And in order to build that unicorn you guys are all going to build, you need to ask questions and you need to ask for help.
Okay. And we were talking about the pitch deck. There is a question saying, before investing in a company, do you look the social background of the companies? And is it really important, the storytelling?
Storytelling is very important, especially at the beginning. Imagine that, and I usually actually tell founders, when you're pitching, take an investor through a journey. And even if you were doing a pitch, the pitch to a customer is different than a pitch to an investor, but whether it's investor, customer, whoever your audience is, take us through a journey, because that's how we're wired as humans, to listen to stories. Ideally, when you're pitching, you want to say, look, I have this vision of how we're going to change the world. And here is the problem. And here's how much money there is. You talk about the market and how it's growing. And there's this big problem though, and nobody's known how to solve it. And you give alternatives on competitors. And you say, but we are thinking about it this way. And you talk about your problem and your product. And you say, and we know that we're onto something because look at our traction. And it could be like users or waitlist or whatever. And you talk you talk about metrics that are showing that the market wants it and that you're going to be able to grow. And we have this business model, and then you show another graph of like how you're going to make money. And we know that what we need to do to get from where we are on our roadmap to the next one. So it's kind of like going on a journey, like looking for a treasure. Between here and here, we need to accomplish all these things. And if we do that, we're able to successfully raise our next round, and we get to continue growing like we're showing you. And by the way, we're the right team because of XYZ. We know the industry, we know how to sell, we have the tech, if you're a tech company, of course. And so we really want you to join us on this journey. We need X amount of dollars. Are you in? Are you interested? What are your questions? That's the pitch. You want to tell an investor that journey you're on, and you're on this mission, and we're all coming together as a community, and we're going to get there. And the pot of gold is at the end. You make money, we make money, we all make money. We have like an Oprah moment. And then that would be my guidance there.
Perfect. We only have 1 minute, so maybe a very interesting question is, as an investor, is there any investor that you admire and recommend looking at and contact?
I love this question. I have so many, and it just depends on what industry you're in that I would recommend it. But there's one in particular. If you're a B2B startup, one of my really good friends, mentors, and also an investor in Ganas Ventures is Malin from Operators Collective. They just announced their second fund. They've raised over $92 million. And they're a wonderful community-driven fund as well. They're aggregating operators from Silicon Valley, and we are also LPs in the fund, and they're tapping into this community of the top operators in the world, really, that have done the work. So if you're a B2B company, they have a great community. Malin is a wonderful GP, also general partner like myself. And I trust her, and I trust the community that she's building and the value add that she can bring. That's the important key. When you're talking to investors, think about how they're aligned with your thesis, your market, your stage, and how they can add value. So if you're B2B, definitely look at Operator Collective as a fund to look at. Again, the community-driven strength is something that I value above a lot of different things.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lolita. This is the end of the first part of our conversation. We're going to switch to a private channel only for the explorers participating in the program, the incubator of Santander. Thank you very much. It was so interesting.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye, guys.